Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 3 of our Moon Knight watch-along discussion. We just finished watching episode 3. Assuming you have watched it. If not, why are you watching our discussion? In this episode, we left off with Mark having the body, and he is now in Cairo looking for Amit's tomb and trying to beat Arthur Harrow to Amit's tomb because he has a scarab. Mark is trying to just tracking people down. Arthur finds the tomb before Mark, and Mark is having some conflict between him and Steven about who has control of the body, hinting at that there might be another third party that we don't know about, because we'll get into that in more detail. Layla shows back up again, not to help Mark/Steven, but because she also has the same goal of not wanting Amit to kill everyone.
So that's helping. That's really...
Yeah.
That was the weirdest line ever.
Yeah, she's her own woman.
Until Khonshu takes over, so...
Yeah. They decide to convene with the gods, the Ennead of all the Egyptian gods, to get their help. Apparently, they don't like Khonshu. Doesn't go well. Arthur's very smart. They try to find Amit's tomb another way because they got a hint from one of the gods that likes Khonshu. So they went to go find this sarcophagus that a friend of Layla's had. Didn't go well. Huge fight broke out. Pretty cool fight, not gonna lie. I enjoyed that fight. Huge fight broke out. Some fun stuff happened during that fight. Eventually, Mark conceded and gave up the body to Steven so he can solve the puzzle because he's the brains. He knows what's going on. And they turned back the stars, which that was wild, but also it looked really cool. That's what I enjoyed from that. I thought it looked cool because stars move after 2,000 years. They found the location of the tomb, but in doing so, because Khonshu messed with the sky, all the Egyptian gods imprisoned him in stone. And now it seems that Steven no longer has the power of the suit and the protection. So what's going to happen there? Also, they're unconscious and unresponsive at the end of this episode. So we'll see what happens. So yeah, that was the synopsis. Breakdown of everything that happened. I think this was my favorite episode so far. I really did not want to see a Mark show, especially because of how much they had us invested in Steven. I wanted to see the conflict of their back and forth and maybe a coexistence. And I liked seeing that with the fight of him trying to find the location of Arthur. But then he woke up after Steven woke up, having stabbed someone. It wasn't him who did it. Not Steven. Mark woke up having stabbed someone. Wasn't him who did it. And it wasn't Mark who did it. So who was it?
You are confusing the names.
Okay, so he was fighting the guy. He had him against the wall. And he was like banging on him. And then he saw Steven in the mirror. And Steven was like, stop it, Mark. You don't want to do this. And Mark was like, get out of my head. And then he got knocked out. The next time he woke up, Mark was in control, but he had stabbed the guy and he didn't know how he got there. And then looked in the mirror and Steven was like, I didn't do this. So third party.
This has something to do with, in the comics, Moon Knight is thought to have the 3 phases of the moon, which me and Zach did talk about this in the 4 phases of the moon, rather, where that's his different characteristics resemble the 4 phases of the moon. And I think me and Zach did talk about this at the beginning with Mark, Steven, Jake, and then this chaos side that's just crazy, which would show that this might be that chaos side. I don't think it's Jake, considering that this doesn't seem like a Jake thing. Jake is a lot more like Steven would have been. However, that doesn't mean squat, because they changed Steven from being a businessman, the business side of Mark, taking care of all the money and stuff that he would get from mercenary work, to being just kind of what Jake was, just more push aroundable, I guess.
I liked how in this episode we're starting to get a little bit more hints of backstory, because Layla coming in talking about like, what happened? You never tell me stuff. And then at the very end, he's like, you never knew me. So it feels like they're leading up to a backstory.
Which is the problem that I had with it at the beginning, is that it needs to have the backstory, and it should have had the backstory within the first 2 episodes. 3rd episode would have been pushing it. However, we still have not gotten one.
We have Steven's backstory. I've liked the way you're doing it.
My problem is that Steven's not the main.
I disagree.
No, Steven's not the main. Mark's the main host.
Yes, but that doesn't mean he's the main character.
No, Mark is definitely the main character.
I disagree. I think it's more than a one main character.
Yeah,
because
you're right. Layla's the main character.
No. I mean, I don't remember watching a hero with split personality. So I'm enjoying how they're trying to tell the story of someone who has more than one person in that body. And they could have started with Mark and just started with like the backstory and then brought up Steven, but I'm not finding a problem with starting with Steven and then introducing Mark. What I would like to happen next episode is in his unconscious coma. That's where we get the backstory. I think that would be a good place to put it. Of like both Mark became Moon Knight, how he made the deal with Khonshu, and also how Steven came into the picture. I think that would be a good place for that.
Well, in the comics, from what I remember Zach telling me and from what I remember reading about, Steven and Jake were already like manifested in his mind as a child. Steven was like when he was a kid. Steven came around. Jake came around roughly when he was roughly when he was a teenager. And it differs from the comics to the show, which is what I'm trying to tell Zach, which I know you stated that you believe they're two different entities. However, me and Zach kind of like say it should mirror as much as it can from the source material. That's where we would differ. And that's why I'm trying to tell Zach, they'll pick and choose what they want to use. Like Layla isn't a character from the Moon Knight series. However, she is based off of a other character that kind of just plays the same role.
I think movies that are made from books should mirror, but movies that are made from comics should be inspired by. That's how I feel.
Like how much should it
Like-
inspire is what
like-
I'm asking. Like to what percentage of it should be inspired? How much
Yes.
should it?
So
You
I
know
don't
what I'm
think-
saying? Like
Yeah, I don't think it should change so much where it's basically a new character that they just slap the name and likeness on. That's too much. But I also don't want a.
so kind of like what they did with Steven, where it's not the same character at all. It's just got the name on it.
I don't know because I don't know. With Moon Knight, I know zero about Moon Knight, so I
Yeah,
don't have the place to put an opinion
and
on.
I get that. And I get that, but based on what you think, if Zach said, "Here, have a read," and you read it, would you then be more
I don't know.
against it or not? Because Steven is a completely different character than he is in the comics.
Is Steven still a pacifist in the book comic?
Steven's more of a businessman. And yes, he's a lot like Mr. Knight. In fact, Mr. Knight is actually a splinter personality of Steven. And Mr. Knight is more of a pacifist. However, he will, when push comes to shove, he will fight you. But that's not one of the first things he will do, if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. It's hard because it's not even like the hard like percentage number. It's weird, and I don't know exactly why I have this opinion, but for like comic books, I don't want to know what's gonna happen going into it.
What I'm saying is, you already don't know comic books, so why would that be a deterrent?
I feel like
Is
no,
what
I
I'm
feel like
asking.
so like if I had read the comics, I probably would want the lore to be as consistent as possible and then just have a new story that hasn't made it into the comics.
Which some movies have done, where they've been
Like I
consistent with
think
the lore, but
yeah,
making it new.
I think things should do a good job at staying true to the established lore. I think some changes are okay. Other changes probably not. With this series, I don't have a liberty to say whether to judge that aspect only because I
Okay.
have no knowledge.
Well,
So I won't respond to anything of yours saying like comic versus this because I'm just learning. I'll say what I like from the show, but I won't dispute what you're saying about the
I
comic.
mean, just me personally, I don't like how Layla is constantly she seems more like a liability in some aspects, and that kind of bothers me as to like why she's there at all.
I mean,
And
I see her as a foil.
yeah, but Steven was already a foil to Mark, so that's where I'm like, where does that come in? Because
I
they're
see
already kind of
Steven
good.
and Mark I see Steven and Mark as equals. Like I think they're both the main character.
I get that to a certain extent, but what I'm saying is Steven and Mark are kind of already foils to each other in the sense that one's very much passive, one's very much aggressive, one's knows a lot more about the hieroglyphics and the like. The other guy is more of a knows what guns are, knows how to fight really well, to the point where he disarms a guy as he points a gun on him as he's talking with Steven, like within 2 seconds. And you get to see that in this episode.
One thing I did really like, one thing that really stuck out to me when you and Zach were talking is how the Punisher is afraid of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
And I kind of really got to see that.
Yeah, you got to see it in that clip. However, it doesn't show the whole time, which is kind of why I'm thinking this is just me personally. I think this is going to go downhill at some point down the line, just because of due to it seems more and more like they're trying to make Layla more of a main than Mark and Steven, as she was more so the one that was leading Mark around the whole time in this
I still see
episode.
her as a sidekick. I see her as a sidekick at the biggest.
Yeah, to some extent, I can see that. However, she's already shown us that she has no mercenary training.
Yeah, no, yeah, she was getting whooped during that fight.
To some extent, yeah, she was getting whooped. However, she
She can
still had.
shoot. She's a good shot, but we saw that in hand-to-hand combat, she's not good. She was barely surviving that.
But yeah, she did it in the second episode where she was throwing guys off of balconies.
I think that comes down to she has some training, and those were just followers of Amit that didn't, and she caught him by surprise and just shoved him.
Well, no, they were getting called to go to the main place because they had just disturbed what he was trying to do and basically just said no. So, I mean, to some extent, I see what you're trying to say, but I'm just like, that doesn't follow through with what the episode's already told us. And on top of that, how did she become such an excellent marksman? That's not really explained at all.
We got a little bit of her backstory from the very beginning of the episode. Apparently her dad was an archaeologist, and she's been doing covert stuff for a while because
Well, yeah, that's what
maybe that helped her, but we don't know enough yet.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is Marcus had lots of years in training with, I think he either joined the Marines, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and then went in and worked in the CIA, and then got fired due to him lying on his record saying that he did not have like schizophrenia, dissociative, whatever.
DID.
He ends up getting recruited later on by Duchamp as a mercenary, and they end up working together as mercenaries. They end up working with her father, and that's what they kind of were alluding to. So I won't give too much away there, but they've kind of already alluded to it enough to the point where I don't know if they will do a backstory or not, like a full flashback backstory, or they're just going to slowly just tell you because Disney was too cheap to film it. You know, that's what it seems to be to some extent. That's what it seems to. That's what
I think they're doing a different style of storytelling.
I mean, yeah, and I'm okay with that. It's
a
just
different formula, I guess.
I'm okay with trying out something new. It's just you also gotta make it make sense later on down the line instead of just having it up there just to have it up there.
I get that. Like I'm holding out hope, I guess. Like
Yeah,
it
and I
has
get that, but like what I'm saying is I've seen the pattern from on this that have been on the other ones that most of us either really disliked or were just like kind of pushing it aside to some extent. It's got those same patterns where Mark is starting to take a back seat in his own Moon Knight show to Layla to some extent. The whole reason why he has split personality, that's just something that he grew up with. But Khonshu makes it belief that it was Mark connecting to him, as that's the phases of the moon, and split personality kind of just connecting that with himself as his avatar in a sense. So it's just a weird somewhat aspect that they're taking the character.
I see where you're coming from. I just don't have that perspective because I haven't read it, but I can understand where you'd have your issues.
Yeah, and I know Zach isn't there, but if it goes the way I think it's gonna go, he will get there really quick because this is a character that he loves very much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know if it gets to that point, then I know he'll be probably very angry. I know he wasn't happy about Arthur Harrow.
Oh yeah, being a former Avatar.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about that. Didn't make it. To my point, it didn't really make much sense to some extent. To some extent, I was kind of questioning on last episode exactly what Khonshu can do to force Layla to do anything if she does become a Moon Knight.
That is true.
Considering that they said in episode 2 that he really can't do anything except move inanimate objects, and that's about it.
I liked the fight scene. I thought the fight scene was fun. I really liked when Steven took over and was just like, time out, and then got impaled, and he's like, take the body, take the body, take the body.
Yeah, that was a funny bit where he forcibly took over and then realized he was way out of his element. It's one of those things where I would like to see them get it to work together. However,
yeah,
that's what I want to see more of, is their progression into making it work instead of that being more so the background of it, and then them trying and then them making Layla more so the focus of it. As she kind of was more so this episode than that whole aspect of Mark and Steven, and even figuring out what that third aspect was, because that could very well be their version of Jake Lockley. I doubt it, but and he even says that he had this under somewhat control with Steven in that boat thing. So that
I,
says that maybe he had it before. It still leaves questions. And
I still don't see Layla as that big a focus.
I mean, they've already said that she's the reason why he's still Moon Knight, as he doesn't want her to become the next Moon Knight.
I see that as a focus for Mark, but not as a focus for like the direction of the show.
I mean, and to some extent, I get that, but she seems more of a liability in most aspects of the, like, especially almost during the fight scene.
However, they did not go into that planning to fight.
No, but
They were trying to be sneaky and she was his in. But I
Yeah.
understand, like, if it's going into a fight, I would not want her there. If it's going into an intentional fight, I don't think she should go. Other than
And
she
I-
just staying from afar and sniping, maybe.
well, even then, she wouldn't be a perfect marksman, I guess would be the words. I don't even know how good of a marksman she would be, considering that I don't know how much training she has, but apparently after however many years of him being Moon Knight, he's apparently trained her to do that well with a pistol at least 20 yards out.
There we go.
And that's the thing. I don't know how much, because they're giving us a little bit, but not enough to where we can fully grasp the concept of what the thing is. It'll end up being something that we don't like, or at least I won't like. I've already speculated to Zach, and he already knows this, that there will most definitely be a female Moon Knight, at least in the 5th or 6th episode, where Layla will become Moon Knight, like save Mark / Steven / whoever the chaos personality was that went berserk.
I can see that based on how
much focus she's had,
based on how much Mark doesn't want her to be. Yeah.
Based on those two facts, yeah, I can see that. I would rather see Duchamp there in some aspect, as that was one of his mercenary buddies.
Yeah.
That would be someone Mark would probably know more about his situation, considering that they were both, according to the comics, they were both mercenary buddies. One of his closer friends. That's the thing with them now taking stuff and being as picky choosy as they are. I don't know how much of what they're taking from the comics or not, so I can only speculate what they're gonna do.
I think this was the most fun episode. We didn't need any like introduction to characters.
Yeah.
It was detective work, fighting work, seeing more of the conflict and forwarding the story and some of the background info that's going on. I really hope we get more. I do at this point now. I want backstories.
Yeah.
Now give me backstory.
Yeah. There's definitely some points where I was like, okay, I can see how this can be a good show. And then there were other points where I was like, why is that even there? I don't know what else to talk about, because there's not really that much to talk about. It just progresses the plot. There's not really that much to.
It doesn't. Yeah, not much happens.
It's
not much new happens.
No, it's a very bland episode according to me. But that's
I thought it was the most fun episode because the ball could finally get rolling.
To some extent, I get that, but it's just they have a whole lot of stuff that they have going on that hasn't been answered yet.
Yes.
And so
yes.
it's just pretty bland, as it's been just maybe adding on to the mystery of the stuff, but not really telling you anything. Another adding block. It's not really doing much of anything.
I get that.
It's another piece of the sea in a giant puzzle of a ship. That's basically, like, it's not really doing much.
So hopefully it stays on track and ends up being a good show.
Well, yeah, hopefully it goes off of the track I'm thinking it will, and goes on to the track that you're thinking it will. So that way it ends up being a decently good show.
I'm not speculating. I'm not a theorist. I've never been good at making theories.
All I say is keep your hope, because that'll be the only thing that'll keep me going with the show.
Sounds good.
I gave up hope on episode 2 and I was just like, what? Where is this going? Oh, Cairo. Yeah. Wow. Moon Knight. Where'd you come up with that idea? He looks like a mummy. Wow. Way to go. Stereotypical. Conscious gonna go buy those urns, Be like, that's my organs. It's like, you want to be an organ donor? There's a line later. Have you ever had parents? It's like, to be fair, you are my mummy. So.
Oh, that's good.
That's my main problem with the Moon Knight suit, is that I wish it was as clean as it was with Mr. Knight, is all I'm saying. Like, I wish it wasn't the wrapping and stuff. I wish it was the clean stuff like Mr. Knight has on his suit. I get it, because they want it to be, I guess they want it to look visually different and visually contrast with each other, but I just wish it was as clean as it was with Mr. Knight. So
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Also, I don't know if Mark and Steven at the end of this episode, if they're dead or not, because of Khonshu being the reason they're alive, because he brought him back from the dead.
That's a good point.
I hope they're not, because then that means that it'll be a Moon Knight episode without Moon Knight, and I don't like if that's the case.
That's a good point.
So I hope they don't go that route. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Galactic Reviews. Join us next time when we do episode 4 of Moon Knight. And hopefully Zach is back with us because we offered him up to Khonshu. So hopefully we get him back.